She replaced her cousin at the airport pickup and picked up a Millionaire CEO by mistake. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The automatic doors of Los Angeles International Airport slid open with a rush of warm air and noise. People hurried past with rolling suitcases and coffee cups, calling names, waving signs, searching for loved ones. In the middle of it all stood Haley Brooks, clutching a small whiteboard that read in thick black letters, Mr. Reed, Maplewood Hotel. Her blazer was borrowed, her flats were scuffed, and her hands were shaking just enough to make the marker squeak when she adjusted her grip. Her cousin Megan had called an hour ago, begging her to cover one airport pickup shift because she had a fever. Haley had never done this before, but she needed the extra $25. Reed, do not mess this up, she whispered under her breath, trying to sound confident as another plane roared overhead. Crowds spilled from the arrival gate. Businessmen in suits, families with strollers, backpackers with tired eyes. Haley scanned each face, searching for the man she imagined middle-aged, maybe balding, a bit grumpy after a long flight. That was how Megan described him. But then she saw him. A tall man with rolled-up sleeves, dark hair slightly messy from the flight, and a quiet, self-assured way of standing apart from the noise. His carry-on bag looked expensive but worn, the kind of thing that said he travels often, but he travels light. He looked at her sign, hesitated for a moment, and then smiled polite, a little puzzled, but kind. Haley's heart skipped. She lifted the board a little higher. He walked toward her. "Are you from Maplewood Hotel?" His voice was deep but calm, the kind of tone that made people listen without realizing why. "Yes, I am covering my cousin's shift tonight," she said quickly, forcing a bright smile. "You must be Mr. Reed. Long flight?" He blinked as if about to correct her, but his phone buzzed in his hand. A notification flashed his evening meeting had just been canceled. For the first time in months, he had nowhere urgent to be. He looked back at her earnest face, the nervous but genuine energy radiating from her. Something about her felt real, not rehearsed, not polished. He slipped the phone into his pocket and nodded once. "Yes," he said, "that would be me." Relief washed over Haley's face. "Great. Let me help with your bag. The hotel shuttle is just outside." She grabbed the handle of his suitcase before he could protest. They walked side by side through the bustling crowd. She tried to make small talk about traffic, about how weirdly warm the fall weather had been. He listened, amused, answering in short sentences, watching the way she tried so hard to be professional. When they reached the shuttle, she opened the door for him like she had seen real chauffeurs do. He ducked inside, smiling faintly as she loaded the luggage. Haley started the van, merging into the long line of cars leaving the terminal. The city lights flickered ahead, reflections dancing across the windshield. She glanced at him through the rear-view mirror. "First time in Los Angeles, Mr. Reed?" He met her eyes in the mirror. "Not exactly," he said softly. "But maybe it will be different this time." She laughed, not catching the double meaning. To her, he was just another tired traveler. To him, she was the first person in a long time who looked at him without seeing money, power, or a company name. And in that small mistake, one borrowed blazer, one wrong sign, one moment of curiosity, their lives had already begun to change. The next morning, the gray Los Angeles sky hung low over the small apartment complex in Inglewood where Haley lived. The walls were thin enough for her to hear her neighbor's TV through the plaster, and the air smelled faintly of coffee and detergent. She sat on the edge of her bed, scrolling through her banking app. The number on the screen made her chest tighten. $42.17. That was all she had until next week's paycheck. Her roommate, Kara, was already gone, leaving behind a note on the counter that said, "Left early for the morning shift at the cafe. There is leftover mac and cheese in the fridge. Please eat something." Haley smiled weakly. Kara always looked out for her, but there was only so much kindness could fix when bills kept coming like waves. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a reminder. Rent due in 3 days. The words sat heavy in her chest. She rubbed her eyes, tied her hair back, and grabbed her thin jacket from the chair. Another day, another double shift at the Maplewood Hotel. The lobby was already alive when she arrived, polished marble floors, a faint scent of citrus cleaner, and the distant hum of soft jazz that management insisted made guests feel welcome. She clocked in, forced a bright smile, and greeted a family checking out. Her manager, Mr. Patel, a man who lived for spreadsheets and online reviews, waved her over. "Haley," he said, his tone already sharp, "can I talk to you for a minute?" She followed him into the small office behind the front desk. The blinds were half closed, and the hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. "There was a problem last night," he said, crossing his arms. "The guest, Mr. Maxwell, our VIP from New York, was stranded at the airport for an hour because no one showed up for his pickup." Haley's heart dropped. "But I did the pickup. I brought Mr. Reed to the hotel." Quote. Mr. Patel frowned. "Mr. Reed?" He clicked on his computer and checked the reservation list. "Haley, there is no Reed checking in last night under Maplewood. Are you telling me you brought the wrong guest here?" The room tilted slightly. He said he was Mr. Reed. He looked like he said yes when I asked." Patel sighed, pressing his fingers to his temples. "This kind of mistake cannot happen, Haley. The guest complained publicly. I had to call him personally to apologize. We cannot afford bad reviews right now. We are barely holding 4 stars on TripAdvisor." "I am sorry," she whispered, her throat tight. "It was my fault. Megan asked me to cover her shift, and I thought—" He cut her off. "You thought wrong. One more mistake like this, and I cannot keep you here. Do you understand?" She nodded, eyes downcast, fighting the sting behind them. "Yes, sir." When she walked back to the front desk, the marble floor seemed colder under her shoes. The other receptionists whispered softly, but no one asked what happened. She forced herself to keep smiling for the guests, typing room keys, printing receipts, pretending she had not just been told her job was hanging by a thread. That night, after her shift, Haley walked past the lobby and slipped into her usual quiet corner by the window. It was the one spot where she could see the runway lights from the airport in the distance, tiny blinking dots of red and white, like moving stars. She pulled a small sketchbook from her tote bag, its cover worn smooth from use. Inside were drawings, lobby layouts, warm lighting plans, cozy color palettes. She had labeled one sketch, "A lobby that feels like home." She traced the pencil lines with her finger, whispering, "One day, maybe." A soft voice behind her made her jump. "That is good work." She turned. Logan stood there, dressed casually in a dark jacket, a cup of coffee in his hand. "Mr. Reed," she stammered, I am sorry about earlier. I should have checked your booking properly." He shook his head. "No harm done. I had a good night's rest." She laughed nervously. "Good. I am glad the hotel made up for my mistake." He looked at her sketchbook again. "You drew these?" "Yes," she said, blushing. "It is just something I do on breaks. I love design, but design school costs more than I make in a year." Logan studied one of the sketches closely. "This one. The way you moved the check-in counter and added natural light, it actually makes sense. You have an eye for how people feel when they walk into a space." She shrugged, embarrassed. "I just think hotels should feel less like waiting rooms and more like homes away from home." He smiled softly, impressed by her words. "That is a better mission statement than half the companies I know." Haley giggled at his tone, not realizing the irony. "You talk like someone who runs a company." "Good. Maybe I just pay attention," he said, taking a sip of coffee. "Anyway, keep drawing. The world needs more people who notice small things." She tucked the sketchbook back into her bag, not knowing that he had already seen enough to remember every page. Later that night, after her shift ended, she climbed up to the rooftop parking deck, a place she often went to breathe. The wind whipped through her hair as planes roared in the distance, lifting into the dark sky. She sat on the hood of her old car, hugging her knees. She thought about her job, her mother's medicine bills back in Ohio, the endless cycle of working, apologizing, and surviving. For a moment, she wished she could be someone else, someone free enough to just draw for a living. Down below, traffic lights shimmered like tiny stars scattered across the city. Somewhere out there, the man she had picked up by mistake was sitting in a luxury suite, probably forgetting about her already. Haley smiled to herself, shaking her head. "Good for him," she whispered. "People like that do not remember people like me." But she was wrong. Because at that exact moment, in the penthouse suite of Reed Horizon's partner hotel downtown, Logan Reed was scrolling through photos on his phone and paused on one he had secretly taken earlier that day. It was a shot of her sketchbook, open on the page titled, a lobby that feels like home. Quote, he stared at it for a long time, a small smile forming at the corner of his mouth. For the first time in years, the Millionaire CEO was curious about someone for a reason that had nothing to do with business. The morning sun poured through the tall lobby windows, painting the marble floor in warm gold. Haley stood behind the front desk, her hair tied neatly, her name tag polished. Her face carried that professional smile she had practiced for months, though her eyes were heavy from another sleepless night. She had stayed up late thinking about what Logan said, about design, about the strange way he seemed to really see her. When the glass doors opened, she looked up automatically, and there he was. Logan Reed, dressed casually in jeans and a light gray shirt, carrying the same air of quiet confidence. He was not supposed to be here. His stay had ended the day before. "Mr. Reed," she said, a little too surprised. "You checked out yesterday, right?" "I did," he replied, his voice calm, almost playful. "But I could not resist the coffee here. I heard the staff makes it better than Starbucks." She laughed, shaking her head. "Who told you that? That is not true." "Then I will have to see for myself," he said. "Do you have 5 minutes to show me where to get one?" Haley hesitated. Technically, she had a 10-minute break before the next shift. The other receptionist nodded to her, whispering, "Go, you never take breaks." So she did. They walked to a small cafe across the street, a local diner with squeaky stools and faded posters from the 1980 seconds. The waitress greeted Haley by name and poured 2 cups of black coffee. Logan sat across from her, elbows on the table, watching how she stirred in sugar without realizing she was drawing little circles with the spoon. "So," he said, "tell me about your dream. The one you draw in that sketchbook." Haley looked embarrassed. "You remember that?" "Hard to forget," he said. She took a slow breath. I just want to create places that make people feel safe. My mom used to clean hotel rooms when I was a kid. We moved a lot, and those rooms all looked the same, cold, white, and empty. I always thought, if I could design one that felt like a real home, maybe people would not feel so lonely when they travel." Quote, Logan nodded, touched by the honesty in her voice. "That is a beautiful reason to design. Most people would just say they want to make things look pretty." She smiled, shaking her head. "Pretty is easy, warm is hard." He looked at her then, really looked at the quiet determination in her expression, the hope that refused to die even under exhaustion. There was something about her that reminded him of the version of himself before success, before the boardrooms and the headlines. Outside, cars honked and the city moved as if it had no idea something delicate and rare was beginning over a pair of cheap coffees. After their break, he followed her back to the hotel. She checked in guests, answered phones, handled complaints. He watched how she spoke with kindness, even to the rudest customers. Every "thank you for staying with us" sounded like she meant it. When her shift ended, he was waiting by the door. "Do you have another favorite place?" he asked. "Something that is not coffee-related?" Haley laughed softly. "Actually, yes, but it is not fancy." She led him to the rooftop parking deck, the one she called her quiet place. The wind was cool up there, carrying the distant roar of airplanes taking off. The city stretched in all directions, shimmering under the late afternoon sun. "This is where I come to think," she said. "To remember that the world is bigger than whatever is going wrong down there." Quote, Logan stood beside her, looking out over the skyline. "You really love this city," he said. She smiled faintly. "It is not always kind, but it is real. That is enough for me." For a moment they just stood in silence. Then she pulled out her sketchbook again, flipping to a new page. "I have been working on something," she said. "A new lobby layout for Maplewood. Do you want to see?" He nodded, and she handed him the book. The drawing showed soft amber lights, plants along the walls, and couches arranged like small living rooms. At the top of the page, she had written in pencil, "People do not just need a bed, they need to feel seen." Logan's chest tightened as he read the words. They echoed something deep inside him, something he had forgotten while chasing numbers and investors. He handed the book back gently. "You have no idea how powerful that sentence is," he said. Haley blushed, tucking the sketchbook against her chest. "It is just a thought." "Maybe," he said softly, "but some thoughts can change entire industries." The wind carried her laughter away, and for a second, he forgot who he was supposed to be, the polished CEO who built a global company. In that rooftop moment, he was just a man standing next to a woman who saw the world with color and kindness. When the sun dipped below the skyline, she shivered slightly. He offered his jacket, but she shook her head. I am fine. I am used to this wind. He smiled, quietly impressed by her resilience. You should not have to be used to being cold, he murmured. She looked at him then, and for the first time her eyes lingered a little longer. You talk like someone who has been cold too, she said softly. He did not answer. Instead, he looked out toward the distant plains, their engines humming against the evening sky. Maybe that is why I like warm people, he said. They shared a small smile that said more than either of them could admit. As they left the rooftop, Haley turned to him. So, Mr. Reed, are you staying longer in Los Angeles? He nodded. A few more days. There is still something I want to see. What is that? She asked. He looked at her with that quiet half-smile again. I will tell you when I find it. Haley laughed, not realizing that he already had. 2 days later, the Maplewood Hotel lobby glowed with soft morning light. Haley was behind the desk again, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she checked in a long line of guests. She looked calm, professional, but inside her heart felt oddly restless. Logan had not come by since their evening on the rooftop. She told herself not to overthink it. He was a guest, not a friend, but a small part of her missed his quiet questions and the way he listened like her words mattered. She was helping a family with directions when she heard that familiar voice. Excuse me, Miss Brooks. Do you know where a man can get a decent cup of coffee around here? She turned, surprised, and her face lit up before she could hide it. Mr. Reed, you are back. He gave a small grin. I was in the neighborhood. Thought I would try that diner again, if you are free for a quick break. Her coworkers exchanged amused glances, but Haley ignored them. I have a 10-minute break coming up. Let me clock out. At the diner, the same waitress smiled knowingly and poured 2 coffees without asking. The jukebox hummed in the background as Haley stirred her cup. So, she asked, what brings you back? Business or pleasure? Maybe both, he said, looking out the window. I realize something. People who actually work in hospitality like you see things that the rest of us forget. I wanted to learn a little more. She laughed. You talk like someone writing a book. Quote, not a book, he said. Maybe a plan. She tilted her head. A plan for what? For making people feel seen, he said softly, quoting the words from her sketchbook. Haley froze, then smiled shyly. You remembered that? I think about it a lot, he admitted. You know, I spend most of my life in hotels. Some are perfect, but none ever feel alive. Maybe that is why your drawing stayed with me. Her cheeks warmed. I do not know about alive. I just want people to feel like they belong somewhere. He looked at her with genuine admiration. That is exactly what most companies forget, that belonging is the real luxury. The words struck something deep inside her. For a moment, the noise of the diner faded. She was just a girl with big dreams, sitting across from a man who somehow spoke the language of her heart. When they left the diner, he offered to walk her back. The afternoon sun painted everything gold as they crossed the street. You know, she said, glancing at him, you never told me what you really do. You keep saying hospitality tech. What does that even mean? He chuckled. It means I try to help hotels understand what guests need, not just what they buy. So you are like a consultant? Something like that, he said with a half smile. Must be nice, she teased, getting paid to fix other people's mistakes. He smiled faintly. Only if you care enough to fix them. Back at the hotel, they stood in front of the glass doors. Haley hesitated, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Thank you for the coffee. I do not usually talk about my dreams with guests. I am glad you did, he said. It made my day. She gave a small laugh. You say that like you do not have many good days. He paused, his expression turning thoughtful. Sometimes even people who have everything forget what a good day feels like. Quoo. Before she could respond, her radio crackled. Haley, we need you at the front desk, Duty called. She gave him a small wave and hurried inside, back into the rhythm of ringing phones and clacking keyboards. From the doorway, Logan watched her for a moment longer, the bright hum of the lobby wrapping around her like light. For years, he had built hotels meant to impress people. But watching Haley greet each guest with real warmth, he realized something he had missed all along. It was not the chandeliers or the marble floors that made a place special. It was people like her, the ones who smiled even when the world ignored them. As he turned to leave, he looked up at the glowing Maplewood sign and whispered under his breath, maybe this is where I start again. He had no idea that this small hotel, and the girl who worked behind its front desk, were about to change the course of his entire empire and his heart. Part 5. Connection. From the lobby to the rooftop, from design to heart. The next few days at Maplewood Hotel began to feel different for Haley, though she could not quite explain why. Logan had decided to extend his stay, claiming he needed a quiet place to work remotely. In reality, it was not work that kept him there, it was her. He spent his mornings with his laptop open in the hotel lobby, watching the rhythm of the place and the way Haley moved through it. She had a calm, natural kindness that did not feel forced. That afternoon, an older guest complained about his suite not looking like the website photos. Most people would have argued. Haley listened instead. "I understand, sir," she said gently. "I am truly sorry for the confusion. Let me offer you a complimentary coffee while we prepare a better room." Logan noticed the way she smiled, not fake, not submissive, just warm and genuine. The guest's frown faded. Within minutes, the situation was solved. As he watched, Logan typed a few words into his notes. Leadership lesson from a hotel receptionist. Empathy closes more deals than charm. That evening, after her shift, Haley found him again at the small diner across the street, the one with neon lights buzzing over the window and the smell of burnt coffee mixed with French fries. They sat across from each other in the same red booth as before. The waitress poured refills without asking. Haley spoke about her life, not the polished version, but the real one. "My dad left when I was 10, she said, eyes fixed on her coffee. "Mom worked double shifts as a waitress. I grew up watching people with money walk in, talk down to her, and walk out like she was invisible." She looked up, voice steady but soft. "I do not hate rich people. I just hate when power makes them forget basic kindness." Logan said nothing for a moment. The noise of the diner filled the silence, plates clinking, laughter from a nearby table, the hum of the jukebox. Her words hit deeper than she could imagine. He had heard people call him ruthless before, but never with that tone, not as an insult, but as truth. Finally, he said, "I know what that feels like. My parents split when I was young. I worked my way out of a place I never wanted to see again. Sometimes, when you finally make it out, you forget how to talk like a normal person." He did not tell her about the skyscraper office or the board meetings. He just let her see a man who once had nothing and was still learning how to be someone better. Later that night, they met on the rooftop parking lot again. The sun had already dipped below the horizon, leaving streaks of gold fading into blue. Planes blinked across the distant runway. Haley opened her sketchbook on her lap, showing him the pages she had redrawn. "This one's new," she said, pointing to a sketch of the hotel lobby. "I added a corner where guests can video call their families. It is small, but some people travel alone for months. It might make them feel closer to home." Logan leaned over, impressed. "What about adding more natural light near that area? People feel safer when they can see the outside world." Haley smiled teasingly. "For a tech guy, you sure sound like a designer." He chuckled, eyes soft. "Let's just say I have seen enough lobbies in my life." They laughed quietly. The wind tugged at her hair, and for a brief moment, everything felt easy. She noticed how his sleeves were rolled up, his hands resting casually on the railing, the way his eyes reflected the city lights. He did not talk like a rich man. He listened, asked questions, laughed at small things. Haley realized she was starting to like him not because he tried to impress her, but because he did not. For Logan, it was the first time in years that someone looked at him and saw him, not his last name or his company logo. Just a man sitting on a rooftop with a woman who dreamed in pencil lines. The sketchbook closed softly. The sound of an airplane engine rose in the distance, cutting through the silence. Neither of them spoke, but in that quiet, something unspoken began, fragile, honest, and real. The kind of connection that would make the truth, when it finally came, hurt even more. The following week moved like a dream for Haley. She had not seen Logan since he left for his so-called business trip, but his words still echoed in her mind. Belonging is the real luxury. Every time she stood behind the front desk, every time she greeted a tired traveler, she thought about that sentence. It made her want to try harder, even when her feet ached and her paycheck barely covered the rent. On Friday afternoon, an email from an unknown address arrived in her inbox. It was short and polite. "You are cordially invited to the Hospitality Futures Charity Gala this Saturday, 7 p.m. The event supports scholarships for students pursuing careers in hospitality. Dress code, formal. L.R. Haley stared at it for a long time, her heart thumping. L.R. It had to be Logan Reed. But why would he invite her to something so fancy? She hesitated for hours before replying with a simple, "Thank you, I will be there." Saturday came faster than she expected. She borrowed a dark blue dress from her roommate, the kind that shimmered softly under light but still looked simple. Her makeup was light, her shoes were old but clean. As she looked in the mirror, she whispered, "Try not to trip on your own dreams, Haley." The gala was held in a downtown hotel she had only ever seen on postcards, towering glass walls, chandeliers that looked like constellations. Her breath caught as she stepped inside. Waiters in black suits glided across the floor carrying silver trays. Guests laughed softly, clinking champagne glasses. She felt small, completely out of place, but she reminded herself why she was there. Logan wanted her to see something. She scanned the crowd, expecting to spot him at one of the tables, but before she could, a host walked on stage, microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the man behind tonight's event, the founder of Reed Horizons, and the new Reed Foundation for Hospitality, Mr. Logan Reed." The room erupted in applause. Haley froze. The man walking up the stage in a tailored black suit, confident and calm, was the same man who had once spilled coffee with her at the diner. The same man who stood beside her on the windy rooftop, calling himself a guy in hospitality tech. Her stomach turned cold. She stood there in disbelief, watching him shake hands with other executives, smile for the cameras, speak about kindness and service. Every word felt like a lie now. As the crowd dispersed into mingling groups, she overheard two managers chatting near her. "Apparently he goes undercover sometimes," one said. "Shows up at his hotels pretending to be a regular guest to test the staff." The other laughed. "Must be fun, playing undercover boss with people's jobs on the line." Quote, Haley's heart cracked open. She suddenly understood everything. She had never picked up a lost traveler that night at the airport. She had picked up the man who owned half the hotels in the city. And all along, he had been watching her. The music felt too loud, the lights too bright. She walked quickly out of the ballroom, heels clicking against the marble floor. The air in the hallway was cooler, quieter, but her thoughts screamed. "Haley!" his voice called behind her. She turned sharply. He was there, breathless, still wearing the same calm expression that now felt like a mask. "Why did you not tell me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Was this some kind of game for you?" "It was never a game," he said quickly. "I was going to tell you." She laughed bitterly. "You had days, Logan. You watched me worry about losing my job. You watched me talk about people like you, and you said nothing." His face fell. "I like being seen as just a person, not a title, not a millionaire. You made me feel human?" She cut in. "You could have kept that and still told the truth." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then she stepped back, tears glinting under the hallway lights. "Congratulations on your foundation, Mr. Reed," she said softly. "Looks like you finally found your perfect design." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone, surrounded by echoes of applause that suddenly meant nothing at all. The next morning, the city was gray and quiet after a night of glitter and champagne. Haley sat by her small kitchen window, a cup of coffee going cold in her hands. She had barely slept. The images from the gala kept replaying in her mind Logan's speech, his polished smile, the applause that seemed to echo forever. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard her own voice again. "Was this some kind of game for you?" The more she thought about it, the more she felt foolish. She had opened up to him. She had shown him her sketches, her dreams, her favorite rooftop. And all the while, he had been testing her, observing her like one of his corporate projects. The sting of betrayal was sharp and bitter. When she arrived at the Maplewood Hotel later that day, everything looked the same soft jazz, same guests checking out, but she felt like she was standing inside a stranger's world. Her co-workers whispered about the Reed Foundation event, about how their hotel might be bought by Reed Horizons soon. The thought made her stomach twist. By the afternoon, her manager called her into the office again. This time, the tone was different. "Haley," he said carefully, "corporate just sent an email. Maplewood is officially under new ownership, Reed Horizons. They will be doing staff evaluations next week." Haley managed a weak nod. "Thank you for letting me know, Co." As she left the office, she told herself to stay calm, to focus on her work. But inside, she felt like the floor had been pulled from under her. The man who had once told her that belonging is the real luxury now owned the very place where she had tried to belong. That evening, when the lobby was nearly empty, she saw him again. Logan stood near the entrance. No suit this time, just a plain shirt and a tired look in his eyes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Haley," he said finally, his voice quiet. "I did not come here to defend myself. I came to apologize." She crossed her arms, keeping her distance. "You do not have to. I get it. I was just another experiment, right? The small-town girl who proves your company's humanity. Congratulations. You got great data." He winced at her words. "You were never an experiment. You were the reason I realized how wrong my company had become." She laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "That sounds like a speech. Save it for your next event." He took a slow breath. "When I first met you at the airport, I was exhausted, tired of people pretending around me. You did not pretend. You treated me like someone worth talking to, not someone worth pleasing. I wanted to stay in that feeling a little longer. But when it mattered, I failed to be honest. And I hate that." Something in his voice cracked slightly, but Haley looked away. "You are used to fixing things with money or projects. I do not need either. I just wanted honesty." He nodded. "I know. That is why I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking for a chance to do something right, something that does not involve lies." She frowned, unsure if she could believe him. "Why would you care now?" "Because you showed me what I was missing," he said simply. "You reminded me that hospitality is not about brands or stars. It is about people. You made me want to build something better. For everyone, not just for me." For a long moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the lobby air conditioner. His words were sincere, but the wound in her chest was still raw. Finally, Haley sighed. "If you really mean that, then do it. Make your hotels kinder places, but do not do it for me." He nodded slowly, accepting it. "I will. But for what it is worth, I still hope someday you might believe that I meant every word I said to you." Quote. Haley did not answer. She just turned back to the front desk and resumed her work, her fingers trembling slightly on the keyboard. Logan stood there for a moment longer, watching her with quiet regret, before walking out into the fading light. Outside, the city buzzed as if nothing had happened. But for both of them, something had shifted, something that neither power nor pride could undo. A few quiet weeks passed. The Maplewood Hotel changed signs, logos, and management memos. But for Haley, the days all blurred together. She showed up, smiled at guests, handed out key cards, and went home. Life went on, but the spark that used to light her eyes was gone. She had stopped sketching completely. The sketchbook stayed buried at the bottom of her tote bag, unopened since the night of the gala. One Tuesday morning, the new general manager, a kind woman named Mrs. Ellis, called her into the office. The tone was different from the old manager's tense professionalism, warmer, softer. "Haley, Mrs.?" Ellis said, smiling. "Corporate has asked for you to attend a presentation downtown this afternoon. They did not say why, but they specifically mentioned your name." Haley blinked. "My name? That must be a mistake." "I do not think so," the woman said kindly. "You are doing a good job. Maybe they finally noticed." "Go, John." Haley thanked her and tried not to get her hopes up, but curiosity gnawed at her all day. By 3 o'clock, she caught the subway downtown, her uniform still pressed and neat, unsure of what waited for her. When she stepped out of the elevator at the event hall, her breath caught. The room looked like a dream made real. Warm golden lights, green plants, soft couches, and a coffee bar in the corner. It was her sketch come to life. Every detail matched the pages she had once drawn in secret. On the far wall, a sign read, "The Warm Door Project. Original Concepts by Haley Brooks." Her hand flew to her mouth. For a moment, she could not breathe. Employees from other hotels stood around, taking photos, murmuring about how cozy and human the new design felt. Cameras flashed. Then the crowd quieted as Logan stepped onto the small stage, microphone in hand. He was not wearing a suit this time, just a simple shirt and blazer, but his voice carried with calm authority. "A few months ago," he began, "I arrived in Los Angeles and got picked up by mistake. The woman holding the sign had no idea who I was. She treated me like a tired traveler, not a brand. That small act of kindness changed how I see this entire industry." The audience listened intently as he gestured toward Haley's sketches displayed on the wall. "Her name is Haley Brooks. She reminded me that hospitality is not about marble floors or fancy menus. It is about warmth, about being seen. This project is built from her vision, from her belief that people do not just need a bed. They need to feel like they matter. Haley stood frozen near the back, tears filling her eyes. Logan continued. From today, the Reed Foundation will launch the Warm Door Fellowship, a scholarship and design training program for employees who want to grow beyond their current roles. And the first recipient, the person who inspired it all, is Haley Brooks. The room erupted in applause. Haley could hardly move as Mrs. Ellis nudged her gently forward. She stepped up to the stage, still trembling, as Logan smiled at her. "This is your sketchbook," he said softly, handing it to her. "I kept it safe. Now it belongs to the person who deserves the credit." She took it, her fingers brushing his for a second. "You did all this?" she asked quietly. "I only gave it light," he said. "You gave it life." You quote. Haley looked around at the warm, glowing lobby, the dream she had drawn coming true before her eyes. For the first time in a long while, she smiled from the heart. After the event ended and the crowd began to leave, Logan approached her again in the quiet of the exhibit. On the wall behind them hung a replica of the little airport sign she once held. Only this time it read, "Miss Grayley Brooks, Experienced Designer." He met her gaze and said softly, "This is your offer, not a favor. You earned this." She held the sign, tears glimmering. "And what about us?" He smiled sadly but honestly. "For now, I just want to work beside you and keep earning the chance to answer that question." Haley nodded slowly. "Then I guess we both start over." For the first time, it did not feel like a mistake. It felt like the beginning of something real. A year later, the morning light over Los Angeles looked softer somehow, as if the city itself had learned to slow down. The Maplewood Hotel, once a struggling budget stop, now stood as one of the first warm door concept properties. Guests lingered longer in the lobby just to sit under the amber lights, sipping free coffee and writing postcards on the wall that read, "Home away from home." And Haley Brooks was no longer behind the front desk. She stood in that same lobby, now wearing a name badge that read Experienced Designer, Reed Horizons Group. Her sketches had become blueprints. Her ideas had turned into spaces filled with laughter, light, and comfort. She had visited new hotels in Chicago, Seattle, and Austin, helping local teams design rooms that felt less corporate and more human. Her life was still simple, small apartment, home-cooked meals, long days, but it was hers. She could finally send her mother money without worrying if it would bounce. She could look at herself in the mirror and see more than a girl trying to survive. And Logan kept his promise. He never used his power to make things easier for her. Instead, he showed up quietly sometimes at design meetings, sometimes with takeout after a long day. They rebuilt their connection slowly, layer by layer, with no secrets this time. Now, after months of travel, Haley returned to Los Angeles from a project in New York. The flight was late, and she was exhausted. As she wheeled her suitcase out of the terminal, she smiled at the irony LAX again, the same place where everything had started. Then she froze. Among the crowd of people holding welcome signs, one board caught her eye. It was simple, handwritten in bold black letters. Future Mrs. Reed. Arrival from JFK. Her hands flew to her mouth as she spotted him standing there, wearing jeans, a gray shirt, and the same soft smile he had the night they first met. The noise of the airport faded until she could hear only her heartbeat. He stepped forward, holding the sign a little higher. "Last time," he said with a grin, "you picked up the wrong man. This time I am hoping you will pick me for life." Her eyes filled with tears as he dropped to one knee, a small velvet box in his hand. The crowd around them gasped and began to clap. A little boy shouted, "Say yes," and everyone laughed. Haley wiped her tears, laughing through them. "Still the best wrong pickup of my life," she said softly. "Yes, Logan, yes." He slipped the ring on her finger, and the terminal burst into applause. Someone whistled, someone cheered, and for a moment the world felt perfectly cinematic. Months later, they married in a small ceremony on the rooftop of the very first Warm Door Hotel. The sunset spilled gold across the horizon as planes took off in the distance. The decor was simple handmade flowers, string lights, and a framed sketchbook displayed near the entrance. On a small easel by the door stood the same whiteboard that had once started it all. This time it read, "Mr. and Mrs. Reed, just arrived." As the music faded and the guests laughed over coffee instead of champagne, Haley looked around the space she had once only dreamed of creating. Every corner glowed with life, warmth, and the sound of belonging. In the background, her voice would narrate softly for anyone listening. In a world that often worships power and perfection, Kindness still changes everything. One mistake, one ride, one moment of honesty. It was enough to turn a pickup into a promise, and a hotel into a home. And with that, the story that began with one wrong sign at an airport ended exactly where it was meant to, at the door of something real, something earned, and something forever.